just ask you, first of all, because I am fascinated by what is happening in Iran at the moment where women are concerned. And I have to say, I have such respect for the very brave women and young girls who are removing their headscarves, who are cutting their hair. What I have found extraordinary is that in all of the street demonstrations, it is not just the women who are demonstrating, but alongside them are men, the fathers, the brothers, the husbands, the very people who have always insisted that their women cover. What is going on in Iran? What is happening here?
Brilliant question. So what we've seen now is for over 2 months, unprecedented, sustained and nationwide protests, which have support across society in Iran and which are now currently posing a real crisis of legitimacy for the Iranian government. You may know that this recent wave of protests was triggered by the killing of a young Kurdish woman. So 22-year-old Zina Massa Amini was detained and beaten by the so-called morality police under the country's discriminatory mandatory hijab laws, and she died in custody 3 days later. So what we saw, what started out as a protest, as you said, against the compulsory hijab, in favor of women's body autonomy and against the morality police, has actually evolved into something much, much broader. It's an anti-government movement, which we're seeing embodied in the slogan of woman, life, freedom. So people are now protesting against corruption, against the lack of press freedoms in Iran, against the lack of social freedoms, and against decades of state repression and state impunity. And like you said, it's also a very beautiful protest. You know, these powerful images of young women and girls in the streets taking off their hijabs, supported by men and boys as well. But what's really, really important to point out 2 months into these protests is the real lethal force which the state has responded with. So just this week, a number of more killings. According to Amnesty numbers, we've had 200 deaths, so 200 killings of protesters and bystanders, including at least 30 children. And in reality, the numbers are much higher than that. So even though these protests are continuing with intensity, what we're seeing is the Iranian government and the security forces continuing to clamp down, and particularly in ethnic provinces such as Balochistan and Kurdistan, which are really experiencing the brunt of these crackdowns.
Are we really seeing the beginning of what might be described as a sort of a gentle revolution going on here, where the men are supporting the women, which in itself is historic in its way, but they're using it as a platform to actually demonstrate to the government that they do not want that regime anymore?
I think that's a very fair comment. We at Amnesty are describing this as an uprising, and it is unprecedented by virtue of the fact that it's been so sustained. We've seen protests in Iran on countless occasions in 2017, in 2019, in 2020, but this is unique. The tone is different, and it is anti-government, it's anti-regime, it's the clerical government. And I think what's different this time around, and as an Iranian, I've noticed this myself, is that there's a lack of fear. Women and girls are no longer scared. We're not scared.
Can I ask you how this has left the popularity of the team with the public in Iran? Because I'm hearing there's a very small amount of people that are actually behind the team because of their position. And also I've heard reports that the Qatari officials have issued 10,000 tickets to pro-Iranian officials, government officials, to make sure that everybody out there is backing the hardline stance. Is that true?
It's a really interesting what we're seeing in terms of the World Cup, because traditionally the World Cup in Iran is a source of much joy in Iran, which is often the case for huge sporting occasions. It's been a source of happiness for a beleaguered population, widely watched, usually a symbol of national unity, national identity and pride. However, that is certainly not the case this time around. We've seen a unique shift in sentiment, and the national team, Team Melli, has actually come under widespread criticism and opposition. And what you're seeing now is I suppose we can call it a boycott in a sense, in terms of attending and watching the World Cup. Very unique. And this is also reflected in the actions of Ali Daei, Ali Karimi, those football legends, former managers of the Iran team, who have rejected invitations to go to Qatar to watch the matches. So I think we will likely see a decreased attendance of Iranians at the games.
That's interesting.
Yeah, OK, so let's pull this back to Aidan in the studio here. Mate, this game is pure politics now, isn't it? England versus Iran. We've had James Cleverly coating off the Iranians, saying they're spreading bloodshed. Can we actually talk about the game, or is this all about politics?
Well, I don't think enough has been made in the build-up to this match about the politics. I mean, look at the group that they're in for a start. I mean, they're in a group with England, USA and Wales, three of their sworn enemies, obviously Wales being part of the UK. In terms of the actual team, well, they're going really well. They qualified out of their section really well. They've lost 3 of the last 29 matches. They've got players playing in Europe. Alireza Jahanbakhsh, who was the player in the press conference a couple of days ago, criticised the English media, who then had an off-the-record briefing afterwards, said, look, to be honest with you, if you'd asked me the questions in a different place, in a different setting, I probably would have asked them differently. This is their 3rd World Cup they've qualified for in a row. It's a source of national pride, as your guest said just then, because back in 1998, I mean, they had a big gap where they weren't habitual qualifiers. They beat USA quite famously in 1998, and that was a great source of national pride, that one. So, in terms of the actual game, they're in the top 20 in the world, along with all the other teams in that group. So, yes, he had that horrible phrase, the group of death, which usually means in common parlance that all the teams have a good chance of making it through to the next round. Iran will fancy their chances because England, don't forget, are under a huge pressure. They've not won in 6 matches. They've not won a game since March. There's lots of speculation about Gareth Southgate's future as well. But, yeah, I mean, they've got a very experienced coach as well, Carlos Queiroz, former assistant manager to Alex Ferguson twice at Manchester United. He was the guy credited by Sir Alex Ferguson with improving their transfer policy, persuading them they couldn't keep signing players from Aston Villa. They had to go and sign players from around the world. So they're in decent shape.
There's been lots of talk about will there be a protest by the Iranian players. This is the moment to do it. Are they likely to do it, or are they going to take the side of the regime?
Well, all the evidence so far is that it's very much taking the side of the regime. They've sworn allegiance in effect. As I say, we saw a very cagey press conference the other day involving the players and the man and the coach. We see the pictures there of recent protests, actually. But having said that, I don't think there's that much support in the actual country itself for Iran. You have to say that. I mean, and this is with the team in reasonably good shape.
So it'd be interesting. Nina is still with us. Nina, will you actually be watching the games? And do you know whether or not any of your friends will be watching, whether they're big football fans or not?
I'll be watching the game. I love football. I'm not sure. I think it's fair to say I'll be supporting England this time round. But like I said, I think in Iran, what we're seeing is likely a boycott of the games for the first time, because many in Iran feel this team is not representative of the people, and potentially serves as a vehicle for representing the government. But I'd like to just say it still remains within the gift of the players and the team to make a move to express solidarity with the protests and with women and girls in Iran, and I very much hope they do so in line with a number of other international Iranian athletes that have competed abroad in the last few weeks.
Nina, thank you very much indeed. I know you're going to stay with us, and I hope we're going to be able to talk to you again a bit later this morning. But I do wonder, guys, whether or not the Iranian team would dare to do anything so publicly on the World Cup stage, knowing that when they go home, it's going to be...
The London-based stand-up comic Omid Jalili has challenged the players, the opponents of Iran in the first group, to do a scrunch and snip when they score a goal. They seem to make gestures about everything else in politics these days. Why not that one? But I don't think we'll be seeing it.
I think it'd be very, very brave of them to do it if they do.